Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Ian from Vetrepreneur. We're joined this week for our Vetrepreneur Growth Sessions with Aaron Sari, CEO of This Is Growth. Aaron, what's up, man?
How's it going?
It's pretty good, pretty good. So I was talking to an entrepreneur this week, and he wanted to reach out to a list of investors. He didn't know how to kind of get the data for the list, and he didn't know how to create a cold email campaign. So today we're going to be talking about how to build a simple cold email campaign. We're going to go through it tactically with you. You're going to set it all up. And then, if anybody has kind of questions or anything like that, just feel free to send them our way.
Perfect.
All right. So what's the first thing that you would kind of say is you want to build a list of individuals, whatever type of list this is, whether it's a list of investors that you want to cold email or whether it's prospects or anything like that?
Yeah. So, for a lot of businesses, if you're doing, one-to-one biz dev, let's say you have a high-end product, that sells for a lot, especially if you're doing like B2B type of business, you need to do more of the one-to-one relationship building, so that's, if you're trying to get investors for your just rely on like in general for that, you have to do some one-to-one relationship building. The same if you're trying to maybe sell ads to a company, you want to get in touch with or sell ad space to a company, you have a blog, you're gonna get in touch with like their head of marketing or something like that, and you need to have one-to-one relationships with those people. So what I see a lot of people do when they're trying to like send these cold emails to either investors, other companies they want to work with, they end up, sitting on Google doing research. They find a company that they want to get in touch with. They find an investor they want to get in touch with. For investors, let's say you might be on something like AngelList, and they'll find one, and then they'll go into their email. They'll create a really personalized email for that person. Then they'll send it off. Then they'll start again, and they'll go find another one. And they'll spend a bunch of time on the research, and then they'll spend a bunch of time on email, and they'll send it. And though that is very effective, it's not very efficient. So a smarter way to do that process is to break it out into its component tasks. So one task there is research, building your actual list of who you're going to get in touch with, and just like the basic information on them. So, okay, if I was looking at investors, for example, that invest in energy-related software companies, I would, go to some place like AngelList. I would do that research, find those investors, their last name, their email address, 3 companies that they've invested in the past that are related to my company, and maybe like the company that they work at right now. If they're an angel fund, or maybe they're, or if they're like a VC fund, or maybe they're an angel investor, they work at Apple, something like that. So just like very basic info on them. You build that list, and then you want to have a templated email that you send to all those people. But you just insert the unique pieces that are unique to that person, and then you track it to see if they've opened it. And if they have opened it and didn't reply, then you send them a follow-up email that's specific for that type of situation where they opened it and didn't reply. And if they haven't opened it, then you send a different type of follow-up email, that's talking about, why they should essentially open that first email if they haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah. And some folks call that like, the 10%, 80-10, or 10-80-10, where 10% of the email is personalized to them, the first 10%. The middle chunk of the email, the 80%, is, non-personalized, is the thing that you're going to send to every single person. And then the final 10% is personalized again to them. So it's specific to them and what they're looking for. If it's an investor that's looking to invest in a hardware company, hey, John, I know you have interest, or I saw on AngelList that you have interest in investing in a hardware company, and then you have your middle blurb. We're a, early stage, blah, 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 blah. And then, thanks, Sean. And I hope that I can help you, whatever, reach your goals at blah, blah ventures or whatever. So you have the first part that's personalized, the second, that middle part that is going to be the exact same, and then the final part that's personalized again.
Exactly. And, and so all of that seems like pretty common sense, where you're like, okay, and, that breakdown, 10-80-10, that's just an easy way to think about how you're going to structure the email. the place where I see a lot of people fail on just a lot of things with business in today's world is they aren't using the technology that's available to them to make it effective. So writing that email, doing that research, that all seems very obvious. But what you want to be able to do is, instead of finding one prospect and finding 1 or 2 prospects per hour and sending 1 or 2 emails per hour, is you want to be sending, 100 emails per hour. And with technology, you can send with the technology that's available, you can send that same personalized email to 100 people and spend very little work on your end. And I'm going to go through some of the ways to do that today, that you can basically spend, with an hour of work and a little bit of cash, like seriously a very small amount of cash, you can have, a list of hundreds of leads built and send all of these customized emails, and even have the opens of those emails tracked, for less than an hour of work and probably about $50. That's not too bad if you're sending to investors, if you're sending to, leads, if you have a blog and you're trying to get people to advertise on it, that $100 or that $50 right there, an hour of your time, is definitely going to be worth it if one of those 100 leads even gets back to you and wants to either invest, or buy ad space on your site. So I'm going to go through today how to do some of that breakdown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to show you some ways to do this here. Cool. Okay. You see my screen, Ian? Probably seeing yourself. Ian? Oh, I can't hear you. I assume you're seeing my screen and you can hear me.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Good to go.
Okay, so the first thing is list building, right? So when you're building your list, what you want to do is have I use a Google Sheet because they're just really easy. They update instantly. It's all cloud based. It's just a really simple way to go. You can collaborate with other people on it, and you want to have the types of information you want to collect about each of your prospects. So I'm going to use the example of investors, but this could be just about anyone that you want to send cold emails to. So I want things like their first name and their last name. I don't have a thing here for their last name, but first name, last name, their email, their company that they work at, the personal message that maybe you want to send to them, their title at the company. Just any other things that are relevant, for you, if you're if you have a blog, you're reaching out to advertisers, this could be, the name of their biggest product, so let's say it's, Monster Energy or something, and you're talking about like a very specific Monster Energy drink if you want them to advertise on your site. So you're going to have these columns be all the information that you want to get. And so even if you're doing the research on your own, this is going to be really helpful for you to just go from one prospect to the next and just really fill out the information and keep going down until you get, like, I would even say go until you get 100, because like the information's out there. And if you go all in on this one process, it's going to be a lot easier and a lot quicker to like get a bunch of stuff done. But even smarter, because we want to make, like, if you're trying to find a bunch of prospects and email them and everything in an hour, that obviously doesn't fall into that hour based on, you finding 100 prospects. So what I'd actually recommend doing is going to a site like Upwork. That's upwork.com. Go find a virtual assistant. I pulled up some here. They're $4 to $5 per hour, and have them do the research for you. Right? You just pop on here, put up a post. Hey, I need to make a list. It's a data entry task. I'm trying to find, make a list of investors that I'm going to reach out to. You'll do the research and put it into a spreadsheet, right? And then you can find someone. It's a very like elementary type of task, $4 an hour. So let's say you pay $25 on that. That's 5 hours of work building this list of 100 prospects. And all they're doing is they're going to something like AngelList, if we're building this investor list, and they're just finding, investors that have invested in the things that you, that are, related to, your company. So like, going to pull up MatterFab, but that didn't work. So maybe they're not in business anymore. But basically you're going to have this other person build this list for you. They're going to put in everything here, except maybe you want to put in a personal message later. So let's say they're going to do these first 4 columns, and then later, based on the information they give you, you can create a personal message for this piece. So someone else is building your list for $4 an hour. Super easy. That's off your plate now. Now you get to focus on the more important piece, which is what are you going to say to these people? So that part is going back to what Ian was saying. Using the 10-80-10 rule. Where it's personal, blanket message, and then personal. Write that out, and make sure you're a lot of so write it out as if you're writing it to one of those investors. And then what you're going to do next is you're going to take out any of the pieces that you have from this this list, and you're going to turn those into basically what they're called is mail merges, where you're taking information from the sheet and you're copying and pasting it into that spot. And the reason that you're going to do that, you're going to create a template. The reason that you're going to do that is what you want to do is use an app that's going to send these emails for you. It's going to look at the spreadsheet. It's going to look at that template, and it's going to fill in all this data for you and send all these emails from you. So you don't have to put in all the work of like doing a really super personalized email for everyone. Really, you're going to have a lot of it, because even if you were doing individual emails to everyone, you're going to have a lot of it that is going to be the same. So it's easier to just keep those pieces the same and focus on the little different pieces that you can mail merge in. What does mail merge mean? I'm going to show you one of the apps that I definitely recommend you use for mail merging and sending these emails. This is called Yet Another Mail Merge. It's a Google Chrome plugin. So you got to be using Google Apps for this. If you're not using Google Apps for your business, then start there, because that's already a poor business decision, in my opinion, if you're not using Google Apps. But a great example, right here, and it's not making the video bigger, but if you look here, it's showing a template email over here. It's showing email address and name on the top, and in the email itself, you'll see that they have hello, name, and the email address down in here. So what that means is when they push send, it's going to pull from the spreadsheet, and it's going to fill in the email address, the name, and any other mail merge type of pieces you have in there. So it can be literally anything. It could be personal message where you're getting this basic info. Let's say you have your assistant from Upwork getting all this basic info, and they give you a link to that person's personal profile too, where you can click through, read that person's personal profile, and then put in there like, we met at, wherever, and that's going to be, mail merged in as well, as long as that's part of your template. So kind of going back, I'm going to cover a lot of things, jumping all over the place here, but one, you want to build a list before you send anything. And you want to have someone else do the research and build that list for you. You can always add toppings to it, like these personal messages and everything, but your time is probably worth more than that $4 an hour. So you should, instead of spending your time on research, just this manual data entry of like Googling things, you should be focused on the more strategic art creative piece, which is building that email template. The next piece is how you're going to send these emails. So let's say you've got your person building this list, or they've already built this list for you. Now you need to be able to send a bunch of emails to a bunch of people, with mail merge relatively quickly. So you're not doing copy and paste where things can get messed up. You want the power of technology to do that for you. So there's a couple apps that do mail merge really well. One of them is Mixmax. They have a bunch of extra features for like tracking and adding a bunch of other things into their emails. Such as, I'll show you mine over here. You can add polls and share your calendar availability, PDFs, GIFs, links, link previews, all this crazy stuff. Plus they track opens and all that stuff. They're pretty solid. I use them. I like them. They're around $29 a month, which isn't that bad for all of those features. But for most people, and this is actually one of the ones that I use the most for cold emailing, is it's called Yet Another Mail Merge. So if you just Google Yet Another Mail Merge, this will come up, and it's a Chrome plugin that ties into your spreadsheet. So if you go to add-ons, like a Google Sheet, after you install it, you'll see Yet Another Mail Merge under here. And what Yet Another Mail Merge does is it essentially looks through Where was I at? There we go. There we go. It'll take that spreadsheet and take your templated email, like we looked at down here, and it'll pull information from that spreadsheet into the email and then send, if you have 100 lines in the spreadsheet, it'll send 100 emails immediately directly from your inbox. And some of you might be thinking like, okay, why, I can do that with MailChimp. I can upload a list with all that data. I can create a template with MailChimp and I can have MailChimp send it. You're absolutely correct. It's very true. But the reason that I'd recommend this for cold emailing over MailChimp is that MailChimp sends from a mail server. So if someone's using something like Google Apps for Work or Google for their personal account, most of those things from MailChimp or other email marketing services go to the updates or promotions folder. So, that's where we put all of the crazy emails that we subscribe to, all the marketing emails that come to us from brands that we bought from, all that stuff. So we rarely look in this folder. We're generally living in the primary folder. Things from MailChimp don't go to the primary folder unless people have set up rules where it will go to the primary folder. So if you're cold emailing, someone doesn't already have that rule. Other things that go to the primary folder are emails that are sent directly to you from someone else's inbox, right? So sending from MailChimp is actually sending from a mail server. Even though it'll look like it's sending from your email address, it's actually sending from a mail server. Whereas something like Yet Another Mail Merge is actually sending 100 emails, or whatever size, of your list, emails directly, individually from your inbox. So those emails are gonna show up in their primary folder. If they're using something like Google Apps, they're gonna be less likely to go to a spam folder. They're more likely to get read and go to that primary folder. So that's why you want to use something like Yet Another Mail Merge, and it's free. So that costs you nothing. So far our cost is $25. The only place that you have to pay is if you want a couple of extra features and want to send more emails. So for example, you can send 400 emails per day for $24 per year. That's $2 per month, from that account. Or, if you are doing bigger pieces and want to do, 1,500 emails a day, along with like scheduling those emails to be sent at a specific time in the future, and just other little extra features, you can do one of their other plans, which is, also $24 a month, $200 or $24 a year, $200 a year, $500 a year. Super cheap for what you're doing. So let's say you get the $24 per year program, combining that with your, let's say, $25 on an admin assistant, you've got $50 that you spent, and that's filled out your list of all your data here. And it's going to send all of those emails for you, as well as track those emails. So why is that important? The reason that's important is you want to know if people have actually opened your emails. So with this example, trying to find the tracker here. There it is. So here's a tracker piece over here. So you can look back in that spreadsheet that you build, and it's going to show you if emails have been opened or just sent. So from there, you can parse out that list, and you can send a follow-up email to ones that have been opened, but no one replied. And you can send a different follow-up email to people that didn't open it in the first place. So you've got everything that you need to do like a really easy cold emailing campaign where you're building a list really quickly, a very efficiently built list. You're sending tons of emails that are personalized, and you're knowing if people have opened those emails, so you can then follow up in the right way. And all of that all of this can be set up and acted on you in less than an hour total. And it'll cost you about $50. You're spending like $5 on 5 hours of a virtual assistant, and then maybe $25 on the upgraded version of Yet Another Mail Merge. And it's an hour of work. You're sending 100 personalized emails. So if even one of those bites and buys ads on your site, or wants to invest in your company, it's definitely paying for that $50 investment an hour of your time.
Yeah, and another thing too that you can do, like let's say you have 400 LinkedIn connections or something like that, or however, or maybe you have 1,000 or whatever, and there's 300 of those connections that you really want to send an email to. You can download a CSV from your LinkedIn connections, take all of their emails, plop it into this list and be like, hey, hey, John, we're connected on LinkedIn, but I wanted to just send you this like super cool opportunity. Then middle of the email, and then thanks again, hope you're doing well or something like that. And that's even less cold because they're your connections.
Exactly.
So there's even other ways to do this. I mean, you can do it with any type of campaign, but the idea is like, so you're building your list, like you were saying, you're defining the parameters of who you want to email. So it's specific. So I want to email angel investors who are looking into clean tech, who are living in, the Bay Area or Northern California. Then you create your Google sheet after that that has each of those kind of things, each of the things that you had laid out, like name, email address, and all of that. Then you create the email template and the message, and then you do the mail merge. And I mean, that's pretty much it, right?
It's super simple. Like if you this video is going to be up on YouTube. If you jump into this video on YouTube, we're at about maybe 30 minutes. You could follow along with what I just guided you through on this video and get everything set up, and that'd take you 30 minutes, outside of like following up after, like the nuances of setting up a job post for the virtual assistant, and then the other 30 minutes is just checking the data and, sending it, so if you even just follow along with this video, you can have all this done in like an hour.
Yeah.
After, the time between hiring your virtual assistant, or less. If you're using your LinkedIn connections, you can download that list right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. You could do that. And like, that's something that we talked last week about setting up a crowdfunding campaign. That's like the exact type of thing that you could do for a crowdfunding campaign.
Absolutely.
If you and your whole team download all of your LinkedIn connections and, set this whole thing up, and then you're sending an email from each of your specific accounts talking about how you're launching a crowdfunding campaign and for them to look at it. And they could all be personalized emails specifically to those people.
Exactly.
Talk about really quick about kind of those follow-up emails. So, and those buckets that people get in. So you have, they didn't read or they didn't open the email. Then you have people who opened and didn't respond. And then you have like the way in which you send follow-up emails. You can send different follow-up emails to those types of groups.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are your buckets essentially. Is people that opened it and didn't respond, that didn't even open it. Because I mean, the third one is people that opened it and responded, but you're going to deal with those very individually because they're probably going to be asking different questions, or they might even, if you've set up your email correctly and made it a very simple call to action, which you should for every cold email, they should just be replying with yes, send it. So for example, if I'm reaching out to investors, my email is going to be very personalized, but the call to action is going to basically be, hey, can I send over my really short 10 slide deck, where they're like, oh, that's only 10 slides. They're going to send it over. And even in that sentence, I'd say like, can I send over my, my really short 10 slide deck for you to look at? Just reply with yes or no, and I'll send it, or not, And so they can literally just click reply and go yes, and then you can send them something back. So that's just like super simple. You should have an easy call to action there. So if people read it, they didn't get that far, if they opened it and didn't respond, then you can even follow up and be like, and say something like, like, sorry, hey, I thought you'd be really, really interested, dive in a little bit deeper. Do you want me to send that really short 10 slide deck? If not, just reply yes or no, and this will be the last email you hear from me, something like that. Just make it really simple, straightforward, because you don't want to waste time chasing people that aren't interested right now anyway.
Yeah, and you also, like, everybody gets 1,000 emails from their iPhone, and it's you get an email on your iPhone and you go, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, I'll get to it later, and then 2 days later you're like, have 9,000 emails. So I think that having that specific follow-up is super important, especially if these folks are vetted to whatever amount of interest that you think that they should have, right? If they're on Angel's list, for example, and they've said they're interested in clean tech and they're, in the Bay Area, and they specifically said like, hey, I'm interested in learning about clean tech companies, and you have a really cool clean tech company, then that's probably something that they're interested in. So they've identified that they want info like that, then, which is like the point of sites like that. Then yeah, you can send them, a follow-up email or even two, if they're very highly vetted. If it's extremely cold and you're not sure, then you don't necessarily want to send that much, but you want to give them a very clear, easy out to be like, hey, not interested at all, or a non-response. And then you don't spam or bug them.
Exactly. I mean, and the best way to think about it too is, when you're crafting the initial email, the response email, everything like that, is think about what kind of email you would want to receive, right? Like you would want a very simple, very straightforward, short email to read with a very simple, actionable response, where it's not saying like, oh, can we schedule a meeting sometime? Like that's so open-ended. Like when, where, how, who's paying for it, right? If the response is something instead like, can I send this deck over? Can I send my pricing list for ads over? Whatever. That it's like, oh, this is a yes or no question. I have two choices. What do I want to do? You probably, so when you're crafting your messaging, make sure that you're thinking of it from your perspective of like, okay, if my inbox is full now, and what kind of short, powerful message would make me open it and then act on it? Because all these people have probably more emails in their inbox than you do, right? So you need to be, creating something that you would want to read, but even better.
And another thing too is on the second email, or even on the first email, you can, especially if they're kind of like a little pre-qualified, you can send them a link to your calendar. If what you need is a conversation, like, hey, if you're interested in having a 15-minute conversation about this, here's the link to my Calendly, and they can schedule it right there. So it's
Absolutely.
like, yeah, if your goal is to get them to talk on the phone, and you should specify what your goal is ahead of time. If it's to get them to look at your stuff, if it's to get them to look at your website, if it's top of the funnel and just know that you're out there, and whatever it is, but your ask should be specific to what your goal is of this. If it's getting a conversation, then say, I like to set up a 15-minute call in the next two weeks. Here's a copy of my calendar. You can select it, and then it'll automate it all.
Absolutely. And I respond to those all the time. If it's actually like a product that is targeted correctly, and I get a cold email that says that's the call to action. It's like, hey, I'd love to tell you about this. It'll only take 15 minutes. Here's a link to my calendar. Then I'm like, okay, I know what their website is. I can go look a little bit and then go, oh, cool. Yeah, let's get on your calendar. Easy. And then now you have a pre-qualified lead that, you just have to sell.
And so final thing I want to touch on is A/B testing the message. So the idea of if you go on Angel's List, there's 200 investors that are interested in clean tech in the Bay Area, that are interested in looking for startups that are pre-seed or something, like whatever the demo is. Of those 200, you can send one message to 100 of them and another message to the other 100 of them. Like, talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. That's definitely like, you definitely want to be doing things like that. Some of that stuff can be automated even with, like an app like Mixmax will be testing, and you can have sequences built in where you can set up the follow-up emails so they, go out based on if they opened it or not, stuff like that. But you definitely want to be, A/B testing those messages. You never want to just like throw it out there and not ever change it and assume that it's them and not you. Because the customer is probably more right than you are in 90% of the situations. So if you're sending it out there and not getting anything back, then that's probably on your messaging. But the only way you're going to know which parts of your messaging are working, which parts aren't, is to send, a couple of different groups out. So let's say out of those 100 leads, you break it out, you send 50 of one type of message over here, you send 50 of another type of message to the other half of the list, and then you see, hey, what's the response rate on these? did they do the call to action that I asked them to do of like responding or getting on my calendar? Or maybe you have two different calls to action where one is schedule 15 minutes with me and the other is reply yes or no for my pitch deck. Whatever it is, that'll teach you a lot, and that'll allow you to refine it, as you go through. So when you do the next batch of cold emailing, now you're testing a different component, and still break it up into, groups of 50, or less, maybe it's 20 and 20 or something like that. But you can keep refining. And the only way that you know what you need to refine in your emails, or, any of your messaging is by A/B testing. Because with just one data point, you can't make anything that you're doing with it is assumptions if it's not working. So you have to have something that you can compare and go, what's the difference between these two? If this one's working and this one's not, then I have to assume that whatever's the difference between the two is one of the reasons that it's working. And then you can stick to that and test something else on your next set of emails.
Yeah, and two, like I had a buddy who sent out a almost identical email to about 250 people. One got like 30 responses, the other one got 2 responses. And it was just his call to action was a little bit different. Instead of saying, hey, let's schedule a 15-minute call, it was like, hey, are you interested in learning more? And like those two things can be the difference between literally 28 people being interested. Are you interested in learning more? Like, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I can just check out your website if I want to learn more. But if you want to actually talk on the phone, then that's a completely different thing. So, exactly. I mean, testing the two differences between, hey, do you want to look at my slide deck or do you want to talk for 15 minutes might be the difference there. But again, you should probably know kind of what those folks are looking for and how they do business.
Exactly. And, testing is cheap. So like if we're talking about like building this list, even, getting 100 contacts on there, let's say I use that, virtual assistant for, 5 hours. If I want to get 100 leads, that's $25. They're getting 20 leads per hour, let's say, to get that 100 leads. So $25 to get 100 leads to do an A/B test that you're sending 2 messages to. So send that out. That costs you $25. Maybe you got someone contact you from that. That'll probably pay for that $25 that you spent on that admin time. And then now have that virtual assistant create a new list or link with like doing more research. There are 7 billion people in the world, right? So like your product can probably apply to tens of thousands of them. So all you need to do is be able to build that list of contacts that you're going to go and, get in touch with in whatever means you're going to do it. So it's a really repeatable, very inexpensive process, but you have to be, testing along the way, and to make it efficient and effective, you want to be automating and outsourcing some of the repetitive copy paste, research heavy type of pieces that can be done by, someone who doesn't know your product as well as you do.
Yep, absolutely. All right. That's about all we have for today. Thanks everybody for checking in. Thank you, Aaron, for doing this, and we'll be here next week.
Sounds good. Okay, everyone.
All right, take care.